there was an article actually in the headlines this morning that Tony Blair is in town, and the Arch decided, after having prayed and so on, he decided yesterday that he wasn't going to be attending the Discovery Leadership Summit, which I found, rather interesting in terms of the timing of when the announcement was made. But in any case, I'm speaking at the Leadership Summit tomorrow, and therefore I am meeting with other people, with Tony Blair this evening. So I'm sure the Arch is not going to be too pleased that some of us are going to that dinner and actually participating in the Leadership Summit. Having said that, it really is a privilege to talk to so many PhDs, students, as well as potential PhDs. I've never been in one room full of so many potential PhDs, and hopefully by the end of this conference, the whole room will, even those people who may not have decided, who are still sort of sitting on the fence, haven't quite decided whether they're going to pursue the PhDs or not, are going to find the inspiration and the courage to do the PhDs. Why? Because if you look at our country today, we produce on average about 28 per million people PhDs. And you compare ourselves with other countries that today we're competing with. Brazil produces 48 PhDs per million people. South Korea, and we saw how South Korea performed at the Olympics. They punch way above their weight. But when it comes to PhDs, they produce on average about 248 PhDs per million people. Australia produces even more PhDs per million people. So if you look at our country and you look at what we have to achieve and what we have to address, in fact, you look at the whole continent of Africa and what the continent has to address in terms of its challenges, it is a no-brainer that we need a lot more PhDs than we are producing in the country today. Now, why do people do PhDs? I'm sure you've heard from the speakers on the panel area today, there are various reasons why people do PhDs. My wife happens to be doing a PhD. She's a medical doctor by profession. And I kept asking her, but you're already a doctor, and why are you doing a PhD? And she's always said to me, ever since she was 4, she attended a graduation ceremony. And she saw these people who were wearing red gowns. And she told herself that one day I will wear that red gown. So I'm sure there may be people who are sitting in the audience here today who saw someone who was wearing a red gown and they want to wear a red gown. And I keep asking her, but then once you get the red gown, then what? And she hasn't quite answered me on that question. So there are people who do PhDs because it's important for them, it's important for their status, it's something that they've always been ambitious to do. There's a second category of people who do PhDs, and they do PhDs because there's a status associated with it. In other words, you work in an institution, and there are institutions such as the NRF or others, such as the Reserve Bank, and there are others as well, universities included, where if you have a PhD, your prospects of earning more money is improved. And therefore, you do a PhD because if you only had a master's degree, it's not enough. There are a lot more people who are going to be having the same qualification as you, and therefore you may not be as competitive or as marketable as they are. You may not be in line to get promotions if you want to be a professor, as an example. And I heard from one of the sessions here, people are asking questions how to become a professor. So you may not become a professor because you have not embarked on the scholarly activity in research and publications that allow you to become that professor. There are people who do PhDs because the NRF or other institutions, are looking for people who want to do PhDs, and therefore, you sort of think, well, there's free money there, and Why not? You'll go and do a PhD because the NRF says they're going to give you a bursary, and you haven't really quite thought through why you want to do this PhD. I must say to you that no matter what the reason is, it is going to be worthwhile to do that PhD. It doesn't matter really what the reason is. However, if you look at South Africa today, 2 weeks to a day, Minister in the Presidency in the National Planning Commission, Trevor Manuel, presented to the President and Parliament the National Development Plan. Now, that's a vision for the country which has been embraced through inputs by everyone in the country, all the stakeholders, which is a vision to get this country transformed into a different country by 2030, in a country that is creating jobs, in a country that is prosperous, in a country that is able to feed its own people, in fact, where its own people are able to feed themselves, are able to clothe themselves, house themselves, provide water, and so on, into a country that doesn't have a lot of the ills that we face in this country today. It identifies a number of things that need to be done in education, to transform the education system to one of the best education systems that we have in the world, not just in the continent. It identifies the things that need to be done in health to improve the standard and quality of health that we have in this country. It identifies things that need to be done in infrastructure, to build our infrastructure, whether it is roads, ports, airports, water systems, purification systems, and so on, that need to be done to grow our country. It identifies things that need to be done in the area of culture, in the social space, in innovation. And therefore, if you look at that plan, or the objectives of what the National Development Plan is trying to do, and the government is putting a lot of effort and money and resources behind the NDP. For instance, in infrastructure, government is going to be spending 2 trillion rand. Imagine how much 2 trillion rand is. You know, if you had to put 2 trillion rand in a warehouse, you'd probably fill quite a lot of warehouses, you know, in the country. So it's a huge amount of money that is going to be spent in infrastructure alone. The issue is, if we have this plan and we know the challenges that we face in this country, what role, through your PhD, can you play in solving some of the challenges and the problems that we face in this country? Are you able to use your PhD in humanities and social sciences to address the question of why don't we have women in companies that are occupying senior positions in large numbers today? Are you going to be able to use your PhD to address the problems that we have in agriculture, in the production of food and sustainable methods of crop production? Are going to use your PhDs to solve some of the problems that we have in technology and innovation? For instance, as people, we communicate, we want to be linked with one another, we transact, we pay people. But if you look at everything that we consume today, it is fair to say that it wasn't made here. It was developed elsewhere. And therefore, we do not have solutions, especially amongst the black people who make up the majority of this country, solutions that we have developed ourselves to the problems that we face. You look at the housing conditions under which a lot of our people live. Clearly, you see people that build their shacks using plastics, using all manner of materials. And surely there must be someone amongst yourselves who has a solution to the problem of housing that we face in this country, and come up with materials that are affordable, that are cheap, that ordinary people can access, that can solve the housing problem that we have in the country without people having to use waste bags to build their homes. The problem of water that we have in the country is a major issue. It hasn't really exhibited itself, but further down the line, I can assure you, based on a lot of the indicators that we have, that we are going to have serious problems with water in this country. Now, amongst yourselves, there are scientists who've got the brains and the wherewithal to come up with solutions of how we can preserve or create or purify the kind of water that our people consume. And I can stand this to what goes on in our own continent. I happen to travel quite a lot in the continent. On average, I probably go to 3 countries every month, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. It never stops to amaze me why people in Ghana or Angola or Kenya or Tanzania or Zimbabwe or even here in our own borders import everything that they consume or use in their day-to-day lives. If something is produced in these countries, it's because there's a Chinese company, there's a French company, or there's a US-based company that they work for that produces the goods that they consume. There are very few, very rare cases where you have indigenous problems that are solved by indigenous solutions and products. So I'm just saying to you that if you look at the problems that we have to solve in the continent, there's an opportunity for you, for each and every one of you, to provide an answer and a solution to those problems. And it's not really about money, and money can come as a consequence of that. And just having listened to the previous speakers, especially the group that came, that had our American guests here, what they're saying is perfectly right, in fact, because very often, especially us as South Africans, we always think about how can First Rand give me a job? Or which company is going to give me a job once I've finished my PhD project? That's why you end up with people from the DRC who come here with nothing, from Ethiopia who come here with nothing, and they end up being entrepreneurs. And then what we end up with is xenophobia, where our own people want to fight these people who come here with nothing in their pockets and make something out of their own lives, because they start businesses, they become entrepreneurial and so on, whilst we are sitting at home, a lot of us unemployed, and we're waiting for someone to give us a job. I'm saying to you, your PhD is really critical, because we can change the fortunes, and we can change the practice where we are just consumers of ideas and information and products to being creators of solutions and products that we can use to solve our own problems, because we should understand these problems a lot more, because we live here. We were born here, a lot of us. And even if we were not born in this continent, but at least we live here, we're now part of this continent. So we can either be part of the whingers and complainers to say, things are not working, but we can be like you and say, I want to improve myself, but I don't want just to improve myself because I want a red coat, a red gown. I want to improve myself because I think there are problems that need solutions, and I could be that person who can provide that solution. If you just look at Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the creators of Google, all of us use Google today for your research or for just information. They started off as scientists who were solving a problem of how people access information. And of course, they've become extremely wealthy, one of the wealthiest people in the world today, but that was a consequence. That's what is a byproduct of trying to find a solution. The same applies to Mark Zuckerberg, a youngster, he's 29 years old today, who created Facebook. He was solving a problem. He was there with his friends in his dorm solving a problem. What do people want? People want to be connected. They want to, as human beings, we want to be connected with others. We want to feel that we are appreciated. We want to feel that we are friends, we are family. And he created Facebook, and that was a solution to that problem. The fact that he's worth billions of dollars today is a sideline. He didn't start out creating Facebook because he wanted to be wealthy. He wanted to create an environment where we were solving a problem. So I'm just saying to you, if you look at just those examples, those are few examples of people that are like you and I, who've approached the issue of why you study, why you do why you are as ambitious as you are, and why you ask the kind of questions that lead you to want to go and do a PhD. It's because you are curious, and in your curiosity, you will come up with an answer to a problem that maybe no one else has come up with, or you can improve on something that exists today, but is not done in a way that will deal with the issues in a more effective way, or deal with the problems in a way that is more effective. So the country needs you to come up with solutions to all the problems that we face. And it is really up to you. Whether we decide to become an academic and go and lecture and become a professor, or you want to start your own business, or you want to work in a laboratory, or you want to make a contribution to society, your contribution is absolutely important and required. And I just say to you that you all are capable of doing it. And that's why you're here. In fact, for those of you who are already doing it, you are proof to yourselves and to the whole nation that it can be done. So we all look up to you. Thank you.